Now read this.
Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the Chronicles of Prydain, Book 4, Taran Wanderer, Chapter 20, The Spoilers. Next morning, as Taran had promised, he loaded Melonlas and Gurgi's pony with the potter's wares, and Gurgi, beside him, set out for Comet Isav. Andlor, he knew, could as well have sent word to the Comet folk, asking them to come and bear away their own vessels. This is not an errand I do for him, but a kindness he does for me, Taran told Gurgi. I think he means to give me time to myself to find my own thoughts. As for that, he added sorrowfully, so far I've found none. I long to stay in Merin, yet there's little to keep me here. I prize Andlor as my friend, and as a master of his craft, but his craft will never be mine. Still pondering, and troubled at heart, Taran reached Isav some while before dusk. It was the smallest comet of all he had seen, and fewer than 6 cottages, and a little grazing plot for a handful of sheep and cattle. A knot of men were gathered by the sheepfold. As Taran rode closer, he saw their faces tightly drawn and grim. Perplexed at this, he called out his name, and told them he had brought pottery from Andlor Clayshaper. "Greetings to you," said one man, naming himself as Drudwas, son of Pebber. "And farewell in the same breath," he added. "Our thanks to Andlor and yourself, but stay to share our hospitality, and you may stay to shed your blood." "Outlaws rove the hills," Drudwas went on quickly, answering Taran's questioning frown. "A band, perhaps 12 strong. We have heard they plundered 2 comets already, and not content were they with a sheep or a cow for their own food, but slaughtered all the herd for the joy of it. Today, not long past, I saw horsemen over the rise, and leading them, a yellow-haired ruffian on a sorrel mare." "Dorath!" Taran cried. "How then?" asked one of the comet men. "Do you know this band?" "If it's Dorath's company, I know them well enough," Taran answered. "They are paid swords, and if none will hire them, I judge them glad to kill even without fee. Hard warriors they are, as I have seen them, and cruel as the huntsmen of Anuvan." Drudwas nodded gravely. "So it is said. It may be they'll pass us by," he went on, "but this I doubt. Comet Isav is small prey, but where defenders are few, the reasons to attack are all the more." Taran glanced at the men. From their faces and bearing, he knew their courage would not lack, but once more he heard Dorath's laughter, and recalled the man's cunning and ruthlessness. "And if they attack," he asked, "what shall you do?" "What would you have us to?" Drudwas angrily burst out. "Offer tribute and beg them to spare us? Give our animals to their swords and our homes to their torches? Comet Isav has ever been at peace. Our pride is husbandry, not warfare. But we mean to stand against them. Have we better choice?" "I can ride back to Merin," Taran replied, "and bring you help." "Too far and too long," Drudwas answered. "Nor would I do so even then, for it would leave Merin ill-defended. No, we stand as we are, against 12, 7. My son Lassar," he began, indicating a tall, eager-faced boy, scarcely older than Taran had been when Cole first dubbed him assistant pigkeeper. "Your count is amiss," Taran interrupted. "You are not 7, but 9. Gurgi and I stand with you." Drudwas shook his head. "You owe us no service or duty, Wanderer. We welcome your swords, but will not ask for them." "They are yours, none the less," Taran replied, and Gurgi nodded agreement. "Will you heed me? 9 may stand against 12 and win the day, but with Dorath, number counts less than skill. Were he alone, I would still fear him as much as 12. He will fight shrewdly, and strive to gain the most at least cost. We must answer him in kind." The comet men listened carefully, as Taran then spoke of a ruse to make the raiders believe themselves outnumbered, and to attack where Dorath would expect no more than feeble defence. "If 2 men were to lie waiting in the sheepfold, and 2 in the cattle pen, ready to spring up," Taran said, "they might take the band unawares and hold them a few moments while the rest of us attack from ambush in the rear. At the same time, if the woman of your household set up a din with rakes and hoes, it would seem other swordsmen had hastened to join us." Drudwas thought a long moment, then nodded. "Your plan may be sound, Wanderer, but I fear for those in the pens, as they may bear the brunt for all of us. If aught should go awry, small chance of escape would they have. I shall be the one to keep watch in the sheepfold, Taran began. And I the other, Lassar broke in quickly. Drudwas frowned. I would not spare you because you are my son. You are a good lad and gentle with the flock. I think of your years. The flock is in my charge, Lassar cried. By right my place is with the Wanderer. The men spoke hurriedly among themselves, at last agreeing that Lassar would keep watch with Taran, while Drudwas stood guard over the cattle, along with Gurgi, who, fearful though he was, refused to be any farther from Taran's side. By the time all plans were set, and the comet men posted among the trees just beyond the sheepfold, a full moon had risen above thin clouds. The cold light sharpened the edges of the shadows and the outlines of brush and branches. In the fold, Taran and Lassar crouched amid the restless flock. For a time neither spoke. In the bright moonlight the face of Lassar seemed to Taran more boyish than before. He saw the youth was afraid and making all effort to hide it. Though uneasy himself, he grinned assuredly at Lassar. Drudwas had been right. The boy was young, untried. And yet, Taran smiled, knowing that he himself, at Lassar's age, would have claimed the same right. Your plan is good, Wanderer, Lassar said at last in a hushed voice, speaking, Taran knew, more to ease his own disquiet than anything else. Better than we should have done. It cannot fail. All plans can fail, Taran said, almost harshly. He fell silent then. Fears had begun stirring in him like leaves in a chill wind. Sweat drenched his body under the fleece jacket. He had come to Isav unknown, unproven, yet the men of the comet had willingly heeded him and willingly put their fate in his hands. They had accepted his plan when another might have served better. Should it fail, though all their lives could be forfeit, the blame would be his alone. He gripped the hilt of his sword, strained his eyes to peer into the darkness. There was no movement, and even the shadows seemed frozen. You are called Wanderer, Lassar went on quietly, with some shyness. To my mind, one who wanders must as well be one who seeks. Is this true? Taran shook his head. I sought once to be a smith, and once to be a weaver, and once a potter, but that is over. Now, perhaps I must wander without seeking. If you seek nothing, Lassar said with a friendly laugh, then you have little chance of finding it. Our life is not easy here, he went on. It is not willingness that lacks, but knowledge. The Sons of Dawn have long held Prydain against the Lord of Anuvan, and for their protection we are grateful. Yet the secrets a lone Death Lord stole from us. To regain them, my father said, would give us stouter shield and sword than even the battle hosts of Prince Gwydion himself. But for all of that, Isav is my home, and I am well content in it. Lassar grinned. I do not envy you, Wanderer. Taran did not answer for a time. Then he murmured, No, it is I who envy you. They said no more, listening alertly to every sound as the night wore away, and the moon, fading behind thickening clouds, lost shape, and its light spread like pale mist. In a while, Lassar blew out his breath in relief. They will not come, he said. They will pass us by. Even as he spoke, the darkness shattered in fragments that turned into the figures of armed warriors. Taran sprang to his feet as the gate burst open. Taran sounded his battle horn, then flung himself upon the warrior, who cried out in surprise and stumbled backward. Lassar had leapt up the same instant as Taran, and the shepherd plunged against the press of the attackers at the gate, thrusting with his spear. Taran struck out blindly, struggling not only against the raiders, but against the sudden terror that his plan had failed, that the outlaws had come too silently, too swiftly. In another moment, above the frantic bleating of the frightened animals, a great shout burst from the comet men as they rose from the cover of the trees, and from the huts came the clash of iron upon iron. At the sheepfold, the outlaws hesitated. Lassar's opponent had fallen. Taran glimpsed the boy spring past him and strike again with his spear. The attack wavered at the gate as the raiders turned their weapons against the men of Isav. But one warrior, growling like a wild beast, long knife upraised, raced into the pen as if to wreak all the destruction he could, and Taran grappled with the man who spun about and slashed at him. It was Gloff. The warrior recognized him. Gloff's first astonishment changed to an ugly grin, almost of pleasure and eagerness, as he shifted the knife in his hand. Gloff lunged, and Taran flung up his weapon to ward against the blow, but the warrior leapt forward, his free hand clawing at Taran's eyes, and his blade flickered as its point drove swiftly in a killing stroke. A figure plunged between them. It was Lassar. Taran shouted a warning as the boy strove to catch the blow on his spear shaft. Snarling, Gloff turned his attack and struck viciously at Lassar. The shepherd fell. With a cry of rage, Taran raised his sword. Suddenly, Drudwas was beside him. Gloff shrieked as the blade of the husbandman chopped downward. Under the onslaught of the comet folk, Dorath's warriors fell back. Amid the turmoil of racing men, Taran found himself borne away from the fold. Daring a backward glance, he could glimpse neither Drudwas nor Lassar. In fury he pressed onward. Torches flared, and he saw that the women and girls of Isaf had joined the men, flailing with hoes, rakes, and pitchforks at the raiders. Taran cast about for Gurgi and shouted his name, but his voice was drowned in the tumult. A fierce bellowing had risen from the cattle pen as a dark shape burst through the bars. Taran gasped in astonishment to see a furious black bull heaving and plunging among the raiders. On its back clung Gurgi, yelling at the top of his voice, kicking his heels against the powerful animal's flanks, turning its charge against the terrified remainder of Dorath's band. "They flee!" shouted one of the comet men. Taran pressed ahead. The raiders, who had left their mounts at the fringe of trees, now hastened to gain them, caught between the comet folk and the slashing horns of the enraged bull. Taran glimpsed Dorath astride the sorrel mare and ran to overtake him, but Dorath spurred the steed and galloped into the wood. Taran turned and raced to the stables, whistling for Melonlass. One of the comet men caught at his arm and cried, "The day is ours, Wanderer!" Only then did Taran realize the sounds of the fray had ceased. Dorath himself had vanished. Taran hurried to the sheepfold, where the wife of Drudwas knelt, her arms about her son. "Lassar!" Taran cried in dismay, dropping beside the shepherd. The boy's eyes opened, and he strove to grin at Taran. "His wound is not deep," said Drudwas. "He will live to tend his flock." "And so I will," Lassar said to Taran. "And thanks to you, I'll have a flock to tend." Taran put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "And to you," he answered, "to you I owe much more than sheep." "Full half the band will plunder no longer," said Drudwas. "Neither comet Isav nor any other comet. The rest are scattered, and it will be long before their wounds heal. You have well served us, Wanderer, you and your companion. You came amongst us strangers. We count you strangers no longer, but friends."
Hey, you want to buy something? You can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.